Well, thank you all for coming here tonight and drinking all of my booze.
Christian Bale's entire career has been built on transformation. Different faces, different minds, different extremes. But while audiences thought they understood him through his performances, the real story was unfolding somewhere far quieter. It started with a viral joke that spiraled into something bigger: rumors, speculation, and people trying to decode Bale's past through the characters he's played. The internet ran wild. Bale didn't react. Instead, the most revealing insight came from his personal life, from a relationship that survived fame, controversy, and decades of scrutiny. Because when someone lives with you long enough, they see the sides no role can hide. And according to Christian Bale's wife, the truth about him isn't what fans think. It's deeper, more complicated, and in some ways, genuinely troubling. When acting became a burden. Christian Bale didn't grow up in anything close to a typical household. In fact, from the very beginning, his world revolved around performance. His mother worked in the circus, juggling roles as a dancer, clown, and master of ceremonies. It was a childhood filled with bright lights, costumes, and constant motion. According to the Times, Bale's early exposure to that world led to some unusual memories, like having his first kiss with a trapeze artist. For him, show business wasn't something distant or glamorous. It was simply part of everyday life. His father added another unexpected layer to that upbringing. A pilot for the Royal Air Force, he also worked as a stunt double for Western icon John Wayne. When Bale later reflected on his childhood in interviews with The Talks, he described his father as deeply creative and unconventional. More importantly, he encouraged individuality and mistakes, teaching his son that being different wasn't something to fear. Bale has often credited his father as a major influence, someone who quietly prepared him for a life in acting without ever forcing him into it. Bale's earliest spark for acting came from watching his sister perform. But his decision to stick with it wasn't driven by passion alone. Growing up, money was often tight, and he became aware early on that acting could help support his family. Once he realized it could provide real financial stability, he committed to it. Still, that practicality planted the seed for a complicated relationship with the profession, one that would follow him for decades. Even as a child, Bale's feelings toward acting were conflicted. In later interviews, including one with GQ, he admitted to having a love-hate relationship with the craft and openly questioned whether it was something he truly wanted. Acting came naturally to him, but that didn't mean it felt comfortable. His first steps onto the stage happened almost casually. While watching his mother perform, people would occasionally ask if he wanted to join in. That's how school plays entered the picture. And before long, directors began to notice him. Bale has recalled how suddenly he found himself being asked to audition for professional productions, almost before he fully understood what was happening. By the age of 10, his life shifted dramatically. In 1984, he made his West End debut in The Nerd, sharing the stage with Rowan Atkinson, long before the world would know him as Mr. Bean. It was a remarkable achievement for someone so young, but it was only a warm-up for what came next. The real turning point arrived in 1987, when Bale was cast as the lead in Steven Spielberg's Empire of the Sun. It was an extraordinary win. He had been chosen from more than 4,000 child actors who auditioned. According to The Times, actress Amy Irving, who was married to Spielberg at the time, had played a key role in recommending him for the part. Overnight, Bale went from promising child actor to the face of a massive international production. From the outside, it looked like a dream scenario. But for Bale, that dream carried a heavy cost. Working with the most powerful director in Hollywood was overwhelming, especially at such a young age. He later admitted that he had no real sense of how enormous the production was at the time. Only years later, after working on smaller films, did he fully grasp how unusual it was to build something as massive as a functioning runway in the middle of a Spanish marshland. The scale of the film was only part of the challenge. Fame hit him fast, and it hit him hard. While Bale enjoyed his time with Spielberg personally, the overall experience nearly pushed him out of acting altogether. He later said that after Empire of the Sun, he felt like he never wanted to do it again. Looking back, he has been clear that he wouldn't recommend professional acting for children, no matter how prestigious the opportunity might seem. If Bale was going to continue, it wouldn't be as a typical child star. He wanted control, distance, and boundaries. His performance had proven his talent, but he had little interest in the attention that came with it. That discomfort became obvious during the film's press tour. According to Metro, Bale barely spoke during interviews and instead spent one press event silently stabbing an orange with his pen. At the time, it could have been dismissed as nerves or exhaustion. In hindsight, it revealed something deeper, a near-instant rejection of celebrity culture. This wasn't about resentment toward fans. Bale has never blamed audiences for caring. What he disliked was the spectacle surrounding fame, the interviews, the expectations, the loss of privacy. For him, acting was the work. Everything else felt intrusive. When Empire of the Sun was released in December 1987, Bale was just 13 years old. He had delivered a remarkably mature performance in a Spielberg-directed epic that would go on to receive Oscar recognition. Yet he had no real understanding of how permanently his life had changed. Returning home to Bournemouth, he tried to resume a normal routine, juggling school alongside his career. But normality was gone. He found himself stuck in an uncomfortable middle ground, well known enough to attract attention, but still young enough to be unprepared for it. The experience, by his own admission, was anything but pleasant. The attention followed him everywhere. Girls flocked to him, while boys often saw him as a target. He was asked to open local fairs and make public appearances when all he really wanted was to ride his BMX bike through the woods. At one point, he told his parents he wanted to quit acting altogether because the attention had ruined it for him. School became especially difficult. According to Contact Music, jealousy fueled bullying, and Bale found himself dealing with constant aggression. His mother, Jenny, watched him grow increasingly unhappy as the pressure mounted. What should have been a moment of celebration instead became a deeply isolating experience. The situation pushed Bale to the brink. He seriously considered walking away from acting for good, desperate to reclaim some sense of normal teenage life. Privacy, something most kids take for granted, had become a rare commodity, and losing it took a real emotional toll. Years later, Bale spoke candidly about that period, expressing deep unease with the idea of child stardom. He reflected on how easily it strips away joy and how exploitative the system can become, especially when adults profit from children who are too young to understand the consequences. At the same time, he was carrying another burden: financial responsibility. In a 2011 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Bale explained that he continued acting largely because he felt responsible for supporting his family. It wasn't coercion, but it felt unavoidable. If he stopped, people he cared about would suffer. That sense of duty trapped him. Acting stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like a sentence. He later described that phase as an acting prison, admitting that the pressure drained the joy out of the craft and turned it into an obligation rather than a passion. That internal conflict explains why Bale's relationship with acting has always been complicated. Success never erased the scars of those early years. As he moved into his late teens, the contrast between his life and everyone else's became impossible to ignore. While his peers were preparing for college and exploring their identities, Bale was managing contracts, bills, and adult responsibilities. Without steady work, most teenagers could drift. Bale didn't have that luxury. In interviews, he spoke about how isolating that realization was. At 17 or 18, while others were focused on studying, he was already deep into a professional career. The stability was real, but so was the weight. For a brief moment, he considered walking away completely. He imagined a life with fewer expectations, one where he could study, make mistakes, and blend in. The temptation to give it all up was real. Eventually, that feeling passed. Bale accepted that the normal life he'd missed was no longer an option, and perhaps never truly had been. He had traded a conventional adolescence for a path that would eventually lead to critical acclaim and an Academy Award. But for a while there, the cost of that trade almost made him walk away from acting forever. Now, after the unexpected whirlwind of Empire of the Sun, Christian Bale made a deliberate choice to keep acting, fully aware of how complicated life as a former child star could be. It wasn't the easiest path, but it gave him something valuable early on: variety. Instead of being boxed into one type of role, Bale bounced between genres and time periods, quietly building a reputation as someone willing to take risks. In the years that followed, he took on projects like Henry V and, most memorably, the Disney musical Newsies, set in 1899. Released in 1992, the film cast Bale as Jack Kelly, a street-smart newspaper seller leading a group of young workers. On paper, it looked like a classic Disney hit in the making. In reality, it stumbled badly at the box office, earning just a fraction of its production budget and quickly being labeled a flop. What makes that chapter even more surprising is that Bale never wanted to do a musical in the first place. Singing and dancing were never part of the plan, and he was openly uncomfortable with the idea. When he first read the script, he didn't even realize it was a musical. Once that reality sank in, he reportedly tried to find a way to avoid the musical numbers altogether, half joking that he could step away during the songs and come back once they were over. In the end, he pushed through his doubts and committed fully, even though he already knew the genre wasn't for him. Despite its failure at the time, Bale doesn't look back on Newsies with regret. He has described the experience as a major learning moment, which is fitting considering he nearly turned the role down so he could attend college instead. Over the years, he has even defended the film when critics dismissed it, acknowledging its flaws while recognizing what it gave him personally. Ironically, the movie went on to find a second life. Long after its initial release, Newsies developed a devoted cult following, especially among younger audiences who connected with its energy and underdog spirit. Even if Bale never embraced musicals, the film became an unexpected cultural touchstone. Throughout the rest of the 1990s, Bale stayed busy, steadily working and refining his craft. He caught more attention with his performance in Little Women in 1994, signaling that he was successfully transitioning out of his child actor phase. Still, it took a few more years before he landed the role that truly redefined him. That moment came in 2000, when Bale transformed himself into Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, the role that almost ruined him. At the turn of the millennium, Christian Bale stunned audiences by revealing a side of himself no one had seen coming. When he stepped into the role of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, it wasn't the familiar slasher lurking in dark hallways. Instead, Bale presented a sharply dressed, hyper-energetic Wall Street investment banker whose violence hid behind perfect manners, designer suits, and a disturbingly polite smile. Today, the performance is considered iconic. What's easy to forget is just how close it came to never happening at all. Even though director Mary Harron wanted Bale from the very beginning, the resistance was fierce. Bale later explained that he was flooded with warnings from all directions, with people insisting the role would destroy his career. The fear was that he would end up trapped the way Anthony Perkins had been after Psycho, forever associated with one dark character and unable to escape it. The studio, Lionsgate, was just as hesitant. They were determined to land Leonardo DiCaprio, who was riding the massive wave of Titanic fame at the time. Herron flatly rejected the idea. In her view, DiCaprio was too youthful and too closely tied to teen idol status to convincingly play a predatory Wall Street executive. She also worried about the optics of legions of young fans showing up for a film this bleak and violent. Even after DiCaprio stepped away from the project, the studio still resisted Bale. They pushed for a bigger name, almost any recognizable star who wasn't him. Herron later described the situation as a constant fight, one where Bale was never the studio's preferred option. She stood her ground anyway. Bale, meanwhile, refused to let go of the role. Even when people close to him urged him to move on, he couldn't shake it. He became completely locked in, turning down other projects and staying physically prepared just in case the opportunity reopened. He never accepted the idea that it was truly over. Eventually, his persistence paid off, but the win came with a harsh reality. While the studio had been prepared to offer a massive salary to land DiCaprio, Bale was given the bare minimum. The pay was so low that he later admitted he was openly mocked on set, with some crew members earning more than he did. At the time, the situation was especially painful. His family home was being repossessed, and his motivation had nothing to do with prestige or recognition. He needed the job to help keep his father and sister afloat. Negotiating wasn't an option. With no studio support and no leverage, Bale either accepted the terms or walked away. So he accepted. He was already training intensely for the role while the studio was still debating whether they even wanted him. The uncertainty pushed him to the edge, but in the end, he got what he'd fought for. What makes the story even stranger is how his performance was perceived during filming. According to later conversations with cast members, many of his co-stars genuinely believed he was a terrible actor. They watched his exaggerated mannerisms and strange line delivery and couldn't understand why the director had fought so hard to cast him. Behind his back, doubts spread quietly across the set. Bale had no idea this was happening. It wasn't until years later that one of his co-stars admitted the truth. Only after seeing the finished film did they realize what Bale had been doing all along. What they thought was bad acting was actually a precise, calculated performance that only made sense when viewed as a whole. The confusion wasn't limited to the cast. Even seasoned filmmakers struggled with the film at first. Early reactions were deeply uncomfortable. When American Psycho premiered at Sundance, the audience reportedly sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to laugh, recoil, or do both. Meanwhile, Bale, Herron, and the editor were sitting together in the back, fully aware that the film was meant to be darkly funny. The humor just hadn't landed yet. Bale himself never saw Patrick Bateman as a traditional horror villain. To him, the character was absurd, hollow, and strangely pathetic. The comedy came from watching Bateman desperately try to project power and control while constantly unraveling. Bale believed audiences weren't meant to laugh with the character, but at him. That understanding gave him the confidence to ignore the career warnings. The role felt too layered and too creatively rich to pass up. In hindsight, it's clear the gamble paid off. American Psycho didn't just redefine Bale's career. It cemented his reputation as one of the most fearless method actors of his generation. That commitment, however, came at a cost. On set, his intensity made him both isolated and misunderstood. He stayed fully in character, never used his natural accent, and avoided socializing altogether. Some cast members found it unsettling. The skepticism followed him through production, but it vanished once the film was released. Suddenly, the performance everyone doubted became the film's greatest strength. That same obsessive drive carried directly into his next transformation. For The Machinist, Bale pushed himself to an extreme few actors would even consider. To portray a man physically wasting away under the weight of guilt and insomnia, he shed more than 60 pounds, reducing himself to a skeletal frame that barely looked human. The transformation was shocking. While most actors would rely on makeup or prosthetics, Bale stripped himself down for real, pairing the physical deterioration with a quiet, haunting performance. Even he has since admitted that he may have taken it too far. The process didn't end when filming wrapped. Finding his way back to normal afterward took time, both physically and mentally. During production, his diet was almost non-existent. He survived on minimal food and cigarettes, sleeping only a few hours a night. Oddly, he later recalled that the lack of energy sharpened his focus, turning him into a compulsive reader as his mind stayed awake while his body shut down. There was no recovery period. As soon as The Machinist wrapped, Bale had to reverse course immediately. Christopher Nolan had already reached out about Batman Begins, which meant rapidly rebuilding muscle and strength after pushing his body to the brink. The physical whiplash was intense, and it underscored something that would come to define Bale's career. He wasn't just stepping into roles. He was dismantling and rebuilding himself for them time and time again. It was a method few could endure, but it was the one that turned Christian Bale into one of the most uncompromising actors in Hollywood. The moment his world nearly cracked. In 2008, just days before the UK premiere of The Dark Knight, Christian Bale was staying at London's luxurious Dorchester Hotel, preparing for one of the biggest moments of his career. But while the world outside was focused on red carpets and Batman hype, tension was quietly building behind closed doors. Bale's mother, Jenny, and his older sister, Sharon, were with him in the hotel suite when a family argument reportedly spiraled out of control. What the dispute was really about has never been fully agreed upon. Early reports suggested money played a role, though Jenny later firmly denied that claim. Sharon, however, described the confrontation as intense, alleging that Bale became so angry he moved toward their mother and shoved her. The situation escalated to the point where both women went to the police and filed a formal complaint. Sharon later referred to it as a deeply private family issue, but once authorities were involved, it became a public matter. Bale did not avoid the situation. He voluntarily went to the police station and cooperated fully with the investigation. Police later confirmed they had received an allegation related to an incident in central London. A man in his mid-30s had attended the station by appointment and was arrested in connection with an alleged assault. The arrest related specifically to verbal assault, and reports indicated the argument may have been triggered by a dispute involving Bale's wife, C.B. Blazich. After reviewing the case, investigators decided not to move forward. The Crown Prosecution Service announced that no charges would be filed, stating there was not enough evidence to realistically secure a conviction. With that, police were advised to take no further action. Bale's publicist released a brief statement saying he was relieved the matter had been resolved and was eager to put it behind him. She emphasized that he viewed the incident as deeply personal and asked that the privacy of his family be respected. Sharon later said that going to the police may have been a mistake, but claimed she felt compelled to act because she believed there was a troubling pattern in her brother's behavior. In interviews, she described the exchange as a verbal attack, comparing his tone to the aggressive outburst that had previously gone viral on a movie set. What upset her most, she said, was that it happened in front of her children. Her goal, she explained, was not punishment, but a warning. She feared his temper could one day land him in serious trouble. Although the family ultimately dropped the complaint, the fallout was lasting. That confrontation marked the beginning of a long estrangement, and they would not see one another again for nearly a decade. There is also another account of that night. A source close to Bale later claimed he was in an emotionally fragile state at the time. He was reportedly dealing with depression following the death of his close friend and The Dark Knight co-star Heath Ledger. According to this version, Bale was under immense stress, but never became physically violent. The source insisted the argument was verbal and erupted only after deeply hurtful remarks were allegedly made about Bale and his wife. Normally, when tensions rose, Bale would step away, go to a pub, or call a friend to cool down. This time, the situation escalated too quickly. In hindsight, Bale reportedly told a friend that he wished he had simply walked out of the room before things reached that point. Christian Bale's wife just confirmed the truth about him, and it's bad. In 2022, an offhand Reddit post quietly snowballed into a full-blown online debate. It used a familiar meme from The Incredibles, showing an enraged Mr. Incredible knocking over a picture frame. This time, the image inside the frame was Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman, paired with a caption implying Bale had engaged in same-sex acts. What started as a joke quickly spread beyond Reddit and into wider social media spaces. Once the post reached Twitter, users began combing through Bale's past roles, looking for anything that might support the claim. One moment kept getting brought up: his work on Velvet Goldmine alongside Ewan McGregor. A rumor resurfaced suggesting that during an intimate scene, the actors allegedly failed to notice the director had called cut, and continued after filming had stopped. No evidence ever surfaced, but that didn't stop the story from gaining traction. At the same time, the rumor took on a second life as satire. Some users leaned into it specifically to mock so-called Sigma culture, where Bale, particularly through American Psycho, is often held up as a hyper-masculine icon. Photos of Bale in glam makeup from earlier shoots were reposted to poke fun at fans who tried to frame him as an anti-gay symbol. The message was clear: the image people project onto Bale says more about them than it does about him. Bale himself has never commented on any of these rumors. Even so, pockets of the internet remain oddly fixated, treating silence as confirmation rather than what it most likely is: disinterest. Long before internet speculation became a thing, Bale already had a complicated view of relationships. Growing up, he watched marriage after marriage in his family end in divorce. Over time, that left him with a deeply skeptical outlook. He later admitted that his ideas about marriage were unhealthy enough that he fully expected never to get married at all. That changed when he met Cibi Blažić. By the time Bale was still in his teens, he had already built a massive fan base. His looks, talent, and accent turned him into a full-blown heartthrob, especially after Little Women. According to CNN, some of his most devoted fans even gave themselves a name. Ironically, it was during this exact period, when his popularity was peaking, that he met the woman who would completely change his outlook on commitment. At the time, Cibi was working as a model and makeup artist and also served as the personal assistant to Winona Ryder, one of Bale's co-stars. Despite his long-standing resistance to marriage, Bale later admitted that meeting her flipped a switch. What once seemed like a terrible idea suddenly felt right. They married in 2000, and it quickly became clear that Cibi was just as multifaceted as Bale himself. Over the years, she worked as a model, makeup artist, assistant, and even a professional stunt driver. Bale has joked that her stunt driving skills genuinely scare him, once quipping that she was essentially chasing him through the streets during the Batman films and could pull off high-speed maneuvers with ease. Parenthood followed a few years later. In 2005, Bale and Seaby welcomed their daughter, Emmeline. In 2012, the family grew again with the birth of their son. Despite both parents being deeply rooted in the film industry, Bale has been firm about one thing: his children will not be pushed toward acting. That stance comes directly from his own experiences. Bale has openly said he would never want his daughter to start acting young, explaining that when a child begins that early, the work stops being a choice and becomes an obligation. He knows firsthand how damaging that pressure can be. Becoming a father didn't just change how Bale approached fame, it changed how he saw the world. He has spoken about the hard emotional line that comes with having children, describing it as an unshakable sense of devotion that completely rewires your priorities. It's a level of commitment, he says, can't be fully understood until you experience it. That shift has even influenced his acting. Bale has admitted that he's constantly performing for his kids, often exaggerating voices and movements just to make them laugh. He enjoys having his family with him on set, calling them welcome distractions that actually help ground him and improve his work. Despite his global fame, Bale keeps his family life intentionally ordinary. He's been spotted doing everyday dad things, like taking his kids to Disneyland or spending Sundays outdoors, climbing trees, wrestling, and running around with them. While his children are aware of Batman, he's joked that they show little interest in his broader career. Of course, having a method actor for a father comes with some unusual moments. Bale has admitted to recording his children's voices and mannerisms on his phone, later mimicking them with uncanny accuracy. When they're ignoring him, he'll break into an impression, instantly capturing their attention. For someone known for extreme transformations on screen, it's a quiet irony. After everything, child stardom, controversy, fame, and intense roles, the part that seems to matter most to Christian Bale is the one he plays at home.